Hey everybody, my name's Nicole, and I'm a very bad girl. I ruined another person's life because of my failure and my own mistake. But the worst thing was that I didn't do anything to help this person. I've always been passionate. If some idea sticks into my head, it's 100% put into reality. My mom always said it was easier to let me do something rather than forbid me anything, but all my pranks and experiments were usually somewhat harmless. They even had a touch of science, so no one really objected, and everyone thought me to be a very quiet, calm, and invisible kid. Well, except for my moments of enlightenment. Anyway, when I was 12, my mom bought a young chemist and physicist set, and that's how I was lost from society. One such set could occupy my research brains for a couple of weeks at least. My parents just fed me and sent me to school on time. Kinda cut down education. The main thing was to make sure that I didn't overdo it with my experiments, because there were some really unpleasant cases. Once, I decided to check some chemical reaction. I stole a cleaning product from the bathroom and added it to the mixture from the kit. It was a beautiful bang. While the liquid was flying, it also managed to change color, which then tightly embedded into the ceiling. Now my room still has a brown and pink ceiling. Since then, my mom remembered my childhood, and everything that can be potentially used for experimental purposes was hidden in the closet. No problems now. At the same time, I somehow restrained myself at school. Maybe I understood there was no need to shock others. Teachers always praised me, showed me as a role model to others, and even tried to send me to science competitions. But I wasn't particularly interested in that, so I didn't show off my skills. Well, it's just, if you do something cool once, then they walk you over. Labs, competitions, reports and stuff. And it takes extra time, which a schoolgirl like me really lacked. And I had a lot of mixtures at home, which I didn't use. Anyway, somehow I got the reputation of a smart, diligent, and very responsible girl. And I never disappointed the teachers. For the most part, I sat still, writing everything that came to my mind in my notebook. I didn't show off. The teachers already had some students to yell at without my evil genius. We had a violent bully in our class. Bob had never seen any limits at all, and his pranks were on the edge of real crimes. He was one of those idiots who would throw a package of carbon in the toilet and see what's next. Bob himself was not smart enough, and he lacked brains to think everything over and develop strategies. He always got caught red-handed by the teachers, and his parents paid a pretty penny for his wrongful acts. Eventually, he got a record in the police juvenile department. After he and his fellow idiots stole the principal's car and moved it to the school's lawn, this case was given to the police for investigation. They said that one more such thing and Bob could really be put behind bars, in a juvenile prison. Anyway, you see why I stayed quiet all the time? I had a head on my shoulders, and I knew well how such primitive entertainments would end. And I could do some serious experiments at home quietly. Parents wouldn't mind it. At that moment, I was already studying robotics and technologies. The combination of chemistry, physics, and math excluded me from the real world for a long time, as I finally discovered a thing I wanted to be perfect in. Well, at the same time, I always repaired appliances at home. I was both gaining new experience and helping my parents, because there was no need to spend money on repairs. But then again, just my parents knew about my research. Others were sure I was smart, but not pretty safe. Then there was the calm before the storm. I was digging into some technical stuff. Bob was quiet and sat in the classroom with a face expressing all the sorrow of the world. But he didn't even try to be naughty anymore. Our teachers were putting useless knowledge into our brains about the world order. That's my personal pain, because I didn't like the school curriculum. I thought it was very limited and didn't give anyone real and practical skills. For about 6 months or more, the school enjoyed peace. In such a still atmosphere, me and Bob were paired in chemistry, and we even successfully conducted a series of experiments. For me, these experiments were easy as pie, but Bob was really impressed and even tried to make friends with me. Well, I don't know, but I didn't need such friends, so I politely rejected him and returned to my favorite robots. The first tests were successful, and my homemade robot from a pile of different parts and microchips was already able to shake my hand. But there were also a lot of drawbacks in my project. For example, I didn't really understand how to sample the compression force. It sometimes shook the hand, and sometimes it tried to break all my bones. And I also wanted to make the robot more functional. For example, make him sweep the floor. Anyway, there was so much work to do that I regretted there wasn't 30+ hours in a day, or that I couldn't stay awake all the time. Anyway, it was fun. Honestly, I somehow got used to the outside world. I just didn't like many things about it. So many worries, so many unresolved issues. But I already said I'm passionate, so that fact itself didn't surprise anyone. Everyone was more pleased with Bob, who suddenly corrected his behavior and stopped terrorizing others. But some of them claimed he was just gaining power. He was planning some violent muck while others didn't see it. That's what they thought. As far as I knew, he hadn't planned anything. I don't know about other cities and countries, but in our country, a juvenile prison is really, not the best place to go, to put it mildly. Anyway, everyone was afraid of prison, but in our case, this is a real hell. According to the stats, only 20% of kids come out of there alive. Just imagine the natural selection. So I was sure he was definitely done with all the mischief. You know what they say about still waters? Anyway, if I were a teacher, I would look through all the quiet people, including my evil genius, and not through the ones who already screwed up, but stereotypes and such. It was the end of the school year, exams and other important stuff for our future. My project was at its last stage. My robot was already able to move around and correctly squeeze the hand. He could also take the stick and broom. I just needed to teach it to not fall from the stairs. You know, I couldn't destroy it right before the exams. A real scientist wouldn't do that. I thought about my problem day and night. Somehow I even managed to mechanically pass all the exams in between my calculations. The problem was that the sensors I needed were insanely expensive, and they had to be replaced with the improvised things. I had an idea, but I didn't know how to implement it without damaging myself and property. So I pored over my textbooks, trying to calculate the amount of substance. When it finally dawned on me, I was just finishing my last exam. I somehow scribbled it up and decided not to go too far to test my theory. Otherwise, I would forget it. So I decided to go to the closet under the stairs and started a new experiment right on my knee. Who knew? Anyway, something went wrong, and my substance popped up. There was so much of it that my previous explosions looked like just a loud babble. Well, what's wrong with a multicolored ceiling anyway? And here there was a pillar of fire, and the substance splashed on the floor and started burning too. And very, very quickly. I ran out of the storeroom in panic and grabbed the fire extinguisher. But when I returned, the chemical fire was already consuming the storeroom and moving to the walls. And the most terrible thing was, the fire warning system was installed on that very wall. I mean, you know, the school had an alarm and special watering cans that could extinguish anything, but they were all controlled via this particular shield, so the school was left without protection. Anyway, the choice of the place for the security shield was logical. If the fire starts, then it would be somewhere in the computer class, in the lunchroom, or in the laboratory. There's nothing to burn in the empty storeroom under the stairs. And who knew that such a smartass like me would experiment with the compounds there? So the school started burning, and since it was a chemical fire, a simple fire extinguisher was of no use. Moreover, it had just a paranormal speed. In a couple of minutes, the entire first floor was just on fire. All I could do was run to the bell button and press it. Fortunately, that was enough. The principal saw the smoke and announced an urgent evacuation. Everyone managed to get out on time. No one was injured. But to my despair, the pet corner was completely burned out. Somehow, no one remembered the animals. The teachers were saving the kids. Some of them coughed because they had inhaled smoke. One teacher unsuccessfully jumped off the fire escape and broke her leg. A couple of kids got bruises from the splinter windows that flew out. So, it all ended well, if you can say something like this about a fire. However, when the fire trucks arrived, there was almost nothing left to extinguish. The school got completely burned out. Only some bricks and concrete floors remained. 3 floors were burned down in just 15 minutes. Man, I should have written down the formula and sold it to the military. They would be happy to have such napalm. Kidding! I was really terrified and panicked then, but I didn't expect the next thing at all. When the investigation was over, the police announced it was a voluntary arson. Well, I already knew that, but the fact was, Bob was charged with it. And for me, it was just another shock. Yet everyone saw him at the exam at that time, writing the answer. But when it came to logic, it just broke under the pressure of stereotypes. Someone saw him going out to the bathroom. Someone heard something and invented something. Misunderstood. As a result, the accusation developed by itself, and really innocent and slandered Bob was sent to prison. And even the trial was more of a fake. No one listened to him, though he shouted he would never do that. Still, a bully and an arsonist are different things, and he never wanted to become an arsonist. That's what he said. He was simply charged with that, and in a couple of days, he was put behind bars. But you know what the worst part of the story is? I didn't say anything when he was accused. I didn't say anything when he was in the courtroom shouting that he hadn't done it. I just chickened out and let an innocent man go to hell on earth because of my mistake. And honestly, this is much more terrible than any fire. Now Bob's parents are trying to get him out of prison and prove he was innocent. There's some appeals going on, but so far all the evidence is against him. And I still don't have the heart to go and confess. At the time of the tragedy, I didn't have enough. I was just scared. And now I realize I can't even open my mouth. And they probably won't believe me. But the most disgusting thing was that if I had found the courage to tell the truth, it's likely I wouldn't even be punished. Yeah, my parents would have paid a huge fine. I would maybe do some community service. But no one would ever put me in prison. Unlike what they did to Bob, that's how I destroyed someone else's life in the snap of a finger. I thought I was a real smartass. But in fact, I'm just an ordinary fool and coward who's not worth being in a normal society at all. Write in the comments what you think of my story. I'm not trying to whitewash myself by any means, but before you judge me, please put yourself in my shoes. And don't forget that it's good to be brave in words, but no one knows what would happen in reality.